If you're on an insulin pump, you probably should know about this. If you're not on an insulin pump and maybe your child is or your friend is or someone else you know is, this is just a good skill to have in case all hell breaks loose. And that's saying it nicely. But also if you want a little flexibility because the weather's warmer, it's almost summertime, and you may want to have a day at the beach or at the pool and not have to stress about your pump and your insulin and wondering what's happening with your number and seeing a situation where, oh, I just disconnected to go into the water for a couple hours and now my blood sugar is 270 and going up and I feel like trash and it ruined the whole day. Like, I don't want that for you.
Coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years, and I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode.
What is going on? Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast. And today I am going to talk about something that it feels like if you're on an insulin pump, you probably should know about this. If you're not on an insulin pump and maybe your child is or your friend is or someone else you know is, this is just a good skill to have in case all hell breaks loose. And that's saying it nicely. But also if you want a little flexibility because the weather's warmer, it's almost summertime, and you may want to have a day at the beach or at the pool and not have to stress about your pump and your insulin and wondering what's happening with your number and seeing a situation where, oh, I just disconnected to go into the water for a couple hours and now my blood sugar is 270 and going up and I feel like trash and it ruined the whole day. Like, I don't want that for you. So that would be taking an insulin pump break. And with this, right, this is something that I don't take lightly. I had done it in the past. I did it once for about 7 months back in end of 2019, early 2020. And it was a lot. It was absolutely a lot. And ultimately, it's something I feel like I need to talk about with you because it's something you should know how to do from a flexibility standpoint. And so I'm personally doing it because, and I'm sure you probably know this from my well-documented issues with sites, which tend to be pump agnostic for me, right? So it's not when I'm on Omnipod, I'm great. When I'm on Tandem, I'm not. Doesn't matter what the pump is. I tend to have to feel like I'm mining for gold, trying to find the exact spot that's going to be perfect. And sometimes I go through 2 or 3 infusion sets or 2 or 3 pods to get a good site. And I think it's a combination of, hey, I've had diabetes for over 25 years. I've been on a pump since, 2002. So it's been almost 23 years of a pump. Like, that's a really long time. And so because of that, and because I like to think I'm relatively lean, right, I don't have tons of real estate for my sites. And so I do everything that's possible, right? I do cupping for them. I do the LaVie wound gel on them. It's diabetes specific. I do all the things, but I still sometimes have issues with it. And what really gets me is it's not so much, okay, I put in a site, I know it's going to be bleeding, it's not going to work, but it's when the site feels like it's okay and then it doesn't work. Or you take it out and it's kinked and it's like, come on, man. Like, it builds up. And when we were on our trip, like a few weeks ago, when we were in Slovenia, especially at the beginning, I had put in a new site right before we left for the trip. And the first couple of days I was fine. And then for whatever reason, the site that I put in next did not behave. It did not like me at all. And so I switched out that site, put in another site. That site was questionable at best. And then what starts to happen, I don't know if you've had this experience as well. And I say this from a place of real raw, right? Because I teach this for a living. My team and I help people with diabetes every single day, but this stuff happens to us too. Like, we're human. This isn't perfect, right? But what I will say is when it comes to this, you start to look at everything under a microscope. You start to think, is my site good? Is it good enough? Did it feel good going in? I don't know 100% if I can trust it. And that's not a good place to be when this is a device that is keeping you in a really good spot, right? It's supposed to be keeping you in a good spot where you're feeling your best and you're living life and you're unrestricted. And that's all the positives of what can happen when you're on a pump that's working. And for me, what's ironic is after the incident I'm about to tell you, I had back-to-back amazing pods. Wouldn't have even noticed I was away from home. Blood sugars were exactly the same as at home, despite all the wildness on the food, despite differences on the time zone, despite differences in activity. Blood sugars were A1. But for that little sequence, I think it was a 2.5 day sequence of sketchy sites where I would yank them, they'd be bleeding all over the place and I knew they weren't absorbing well and my numbers flying up for no reason. It got really old and it got really frustrating. And I talked about it last episode where the food itself had, brown sugar and breadcrumbs and things that I didn't expect. But once that type of stuff is anticipated and then there's still a major rise and you did everything right, you dosed on time, you counted up the carbs right, you counted up the protein right, and you're still shooting to the moon and it's the sites issue, that's where it gets to me even more frustrating because it's one thing, hey, and I'm not advocating for this, but hey, I had this dessert or I had this food and I wasn't totally sure and I underdosed a little bit, but you go up and you know what happened and you can come down. When it's the site, then it becomes is it working? Is it not working? I don't know if it's going to come down. I correct it with the site. Do I trust that? Do I take an inject? And you start to get the idea of what the stress can look like. And it's a pretty scary place to be. And again, like I said before, my team and I, we all have this, right? We all live with this on a daily basis as well. And it's something where we have protocols where we run through the same ones that we teach our patients, right? Of, hey, your blood sugar is high. Here's what to do. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And running through that protocol is not quite that extensive, but you get the idea. But it happens to all of us at some point. And so I started looking at everything under a microscope. I was not having it. And what really set me over the edge was it was the last day, even really we were flying home. It was a transit day. So we were about to get onto our final flight. And I'd eaten something for breakfast. We had gone to the place the day before, so I had an idea of what was on the menu. And the day before, ready for this? The day before it was like a huevos rancheros type thing. And there was some pancakes, which they were smaller, but they were still really good pancakes. And I had some other protein source. I think I had they had some chicken breast or something like that. And I did really well, right? My numbers were great. I did amazing. We walked a bunch. I was still fine. Well, I said, you know what? The next day I'm going to be sitting on a plane for 9+ hours. I'm going to eat something similar without the pancakes. So same type of thing without the pancakes. I'm like, hey, I don't really want to think about it. I just want to be able to go, do my thing and go. I ate that food and I'm not joking. The day before, I went up to like 130, 140 with the pancakes, might I add, with walking, didn't go low, hung out in like, the 80 to 90 range for most of the afternoon. I ate the same thing without the pancakes. And I shit you not, I hit over 300. I was like 310. I'm like, you have got to be effing kidding me. I went out of my way. I'm not going to do anything crazy. And lo and behold, I'm like, this is definitely the site. So I got really irked. And so we're in the middle of the airport. I took out my Tresiba and I said, the heck with this. And I took my Tresiba. And once I took it, I knew it was going to take a while as they start kicking in, but I knew the site was somewhat working. And fortunately, a few hours into the flight, Tresiba starts kicking in. My number goes back to normal. Angels sing, praise the Lord, hallelujah. And my blood sugars went right back to where they normally are. Shocking. And because I had insulin, that was actually working. And that's not necessarily the way that I would go about doing it, right? It was a situation where I knew, okay, I'm going to be on a plane for a while. I know I can correct. I know there's food and there's beverages that I need in case my number tanks or in case I'm going up. But the bigger thing here is I really just want to emphasize and drive home this point that it is so important to know how to do a pump break and really how to just transition off of your insulin pump onto injections and vice versa. Well, vice versa if you have a pump to go back to. Because first off, like I mentioned before, if you want to have flexibility at the beach, you want to have flexibility with water activities, right? Oh, I want to go tubing. Okay, well, here's your options if you're on a tubed insulin pump. Your options are, number one, you take off the pump and now every, 40 minutes or so, you're taking a look at your number. You might have to add a little bit to replace the basal that you're missing because if it's off for multiple hours, it won't hit you right then, but it'll come back and bite you in the butt a few hours later and it's not going to feel nice when your blood sugar's flying up from 110 to 280 because you don't have any insulin in your system. So you're avoiding that situation entirely. And then also, the other caveat about it is you then don't have to worry about carrying it. If it gets in the sun, you're good. And one could argue, well, the Omnipod does the same thing. Right. But again, similar situation, the Omnipod also has to be working in that case. And knock on wood, from a adhesive standpoint, it seems pretty good for me personally. And you can use skin tack and other things to help it stay stickier. And I love the pod, right? I absolutely adore the pod. I think I did a whole episode on how much I love the pod and how it works so well for me when it works. But I think the biggest thing with this is you have this background insulin. If you're on Tresiba, you're on Toujeo, you're on Lantus. You've got background insulin working for you. You can go tubing, do whatever you need to do. Sure, you're still need to pay attention to your blood sugar. Sure, you still need to make sure that you're not going to fall off a cliff. And yeah, you don't have the luxury of being able to shut your basal down if your number's trending low. But as long as you're willing to treat with food, you don't have to stress about anything because you've got insulin going in your body the entire time because you have that long acting. And so at that point, I remember I took the Tresiba, sat on the plane, number went back to normal, went home. And at that point, everything was just chilling. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to keep running this. I'm going to keep on running this. And it went great. I thought it was glorious. And ultimately just said, hey, I'm going to run this. I'm going to run this. I'm going to run this. And the other thing that I think is really important too about knowing how to do this is not just, okay, you want water sports, you want to, go tubing, you want to go on a slip and slide. But the other thing about it, it's really beneficial is if God forbid there's an issue with the technology, right? Like what would happen to me? The last thing you want is, okay, cool. I'm about to sit on a 9-hour plus flight and my blood sugar is 300. Maybe you get it down to 260 and you feel like trash the entire time because you have no idea what in tarnation you're supposed to be doing. And now you're trying to decide, do I rely on this sketchy site? Do I do a site change in the middle of an airplane, which does not sound like a pleasant experience? About a year-ish ago, I had to do a site change in the middle of the Pittsburgh airport, and it was empty, and it still wasn't a fun experience. But imagine you're on a plane, you're at 30,000 feet, you're trying to put in a new site. I don't even want to think about that situation. Let's be real, planes aren't exactly comfortable to begin with, and then you tack on that, like, no thanks, I'm good. And I ain't going in an airplane bathroom to do a site change. That sounds like just a nightmare and cesspool of germs waiting to just, gross. I don't even want to fathom that idea, right? So it then becomes, what do you trust in that? Do you trust your site that may or may not be working, or do you trust the Traceba that you took, that at least is sanitary, and at least it's going to start working in your body? And so that's why I did that. And I thought it was the right move, and ultimately it was. But I really feel like it's important to know how to do this and how to transition on and off. And you could transition in some situations like I did, right? You can go straight into it. Hey, I'm going to do this, same day. It's a little more ballsy because there is a chance and there is a risk that if your site is just straight up not working at all, that you will have no insulin for a few hours. Because a lot of these take a little while to start kicking in. It might take 3, 4, 5 hours to kick in. And I've seen that where people are like, oh, I'm going to switch now and I'm going to just yank my site and I'm going to take Traceba and it's going to be great. And then what ends up happening? They end up with a super high blood sugar because they went without insulin for hours on end. I would never just go from one to the other. Obviously, the transition plan is going to be different for everybody, but I would never just yank your site and just go straight to a long acting. That is not going to end well. Unless you plan to literally replace your basal every hour for the next 4 hours until it starts kicking in. I would never recommend that. I personally would recommend, obviously it's something we do with the patients, but I would recommend something more along the lines of, hey, let's do this. Let's be smart about this, but let's transition this over a time frame. What I did on the plane was a lot more ballsy, but I also knew my site was still working a little bit. I didn't think it was working 100%, but I knew at least it was working a little bit. Because otherwise I would have been, God forbid, way higher than I went. Like it went up and it curved and stopped at, 3 whatever. So I was probably getting, 2/3, 3/4 of what I was expecting, which is not good, but at least it was somewhat working. So first moral of the story, first takeaway for you is if you're on a pump, you have to have long acting backup. If your doctor says no, you might want to find a different doctor. And I say that with all the love in the world. Again, you need to have a backup. What if the pump dies? What if there's a problem and you have to ship your pump back because there's a critical error, which I've had I remember on the Tandem vividly, it was like button error. And I'm like, I don't know what this means. They're like, call us immediately. So I call them, and what ends up happening? They're like, oh, you have to send the pump back. Well, in that situation, what do you do? If you don't have a backup pump on you, which many people don't, what are you supposed to do? You have to go to injections for that time frame until the new pump shows up, right? Because you don't have a pump. So having that long-acting backup is going to be a huge deal. Otherwise, again, similar situation. You're taking insulin every hour and a half or so to keep your basal going, and it's miserable because you're waking up the whole night, you're exhausted, and the new pump shows up, you're like, thank frickin' God. So that is another reason to have this long-acting. And concurrently too, with a lot of times, like I was alluding to, it might take a couple of days to transition over. It may take a couple of days to switch over, and that is okay. I think, quite frankly, you're better served if you start titrating down on basal on one and up on the other, and then you eventually go full swing after the second day. I think that's a much better solution. Again, for the nitty gritty details for your particular situation, you're going to have to consult with your care team. You don't have a care team that talks about this stuff. My team and I are likely able to help you, and obviously reach out to me on social media, Man of Zeal, MANOFTZEEL on Instagram and TikTok, and we're happy to have that conversation and see how we can best support you. But with that, right, you have to make sure you've got long acting at your disposal. You have to know how to use it, because also the transition from one to the other doesn't just mean, oh, I have 25 units on the pump and I have 25 units on it doesn't work that way either. It's never quite that cut and dried. God, I wish it was. It would be so easy, but it's not. For whatever reason, the pump takes less. I could not give you a scientific reason why. I just know anecdotally, and I know from an evidence base from all the people that we've had who have done this transition, it never is equal. If it was equal, it would be so simple. But again, why you have a care team that has your back. But the other thing to think about is, let's say you say, you know what, Ben, I'm about to go on a beach day. I'm going to do this for the weekend. So you do the transition over, you're on the injections. It's great. You have to remember you will not have the ability to do basal adjustments. And I cannot emphasize that enough, because as someone who's been on a pump for the majority of the last 20 years, it is so convenient to say, you know what, I'm just going to dial back for an hour. I'm going to dial back for a little longer than that. I'm going to see what happens. You can't do that. There is no way to do that. Your basal's in your system and it is there. So food becomes your best friend. So everything is then being treated by food. If you're someone who's trying to lose weight, that may come into play a little bit, right? Because you suddenly have to realize I have all these extra calories that I may or may not have to eat because I cannot turn my basal down. Does that tend to be an issue? No, but also you have to be on top of your game. The other thing I'll say is if you're on a pump and you're like, I don't know about this whole injection thing, I think it's really important to just have the concept and have the experience with it. Because I will say also, until I did the pump break in 2019 for about 7 months, I had been on a pump continuously for 17 years. That is a very long time. Like I was in 5th grade, I think, when I got a pump. I'm old, right? But the bigger thing is that's a really long time. And like I was at a point at that point where I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm like, okay, like I know, I'm in the diabetes world. I know what's going on, but like I wasn't 100% confident with everything. But then once I did it, I was like, oh, this really it's not that awful compared to what I expected it to be. And I think it's important to have that optionality if you can swing it and if your doctor's willing to be on board with you, which I would imagine that they would be because they want the best for you. And if they don't, they shouldn't be a doctor. But again, I digress. But with this too, there's people that run MDI all the time and they do amazing. Some people I know have some of the best A1Cs ever and they're doing MDI. Patients in the 5s, right? 5.5, 5.3, 5.6 while running MDI. And it's so difficult. If you just realize you're going to take a few injections, that's okay. You will do amazing. But I really think that this is something where if you are on an insulin pump, you should know how to do this. Your care team should be teaching this to you. You should have long-acting backup. And you should know how to do this in case the pump has a problem or in case you're going to have, a potential weekend where the pump's disconnected. And even with that, even if you're like, I'm on the Omnipod, I don't got to worry about that. I can get my insulin all the time, which I'm not going to lie, one of my favorite parts of the pod, right? You can literally be like, I'm going to go in the ocean. I don't have anything to worry about. I can still make the adjustments. But the difference is if that pod falls off, you don't have insulin going. With this method, you don't have to worry about it. And there's also the whole concept, and I'm just going to tease this one because I could do a whole episode about this next topic if you want to hear more about it. So let me know if you do. But you could go the untethered method where you're on a pump, but you've got the transceiver running. So what that would look like, right? You take your long acting, that's got your basal covered, but then you're connected to your pump, but you use it for meals. So maybe you have an extended bolus. Well, now you've got your pump to do that for you. Maybe you've got, hey, I'm eating lunch. You dose on the pump instead of an injection. So it takes some of the constant injections out of your life. You have the one or maybe 2 for the long acting, and then you've got your pump every 3 days. So you eliminate some of the constant injecting, but you still have the ability, in addition, to say, hey, I'm going to extend doses. I'm going to take extra doses. We're out to dinner. I have another course. I'm going to have another dose instead of another injection. It's another possibility. Again, some people I know love it. Some people really love it as, their beach day option. Hey, I've got my long acting. I'm not worried about that. But I know if I need to dose and we're going to go do something at a buffet or whatever, I've got options there. And so again, there's many ways to succeed and thrive while living with diabetes. And there's no one right answer that everyone must do. Because if that were the case, we would all do it, right? It's the same thing with diets. It's the same thing with the pumps and the diabetes management specifics of, do I take my insulin this way? Do I take it that? It doesn't matter. It's up to what works to you. But I think if you're on a pump, you should know how to get off of a pump temporarily or permanently or semi-temporarily, right? I think you should have that skill set because it's going to serve you major ways in the future. It's going to pay off major dividends if and when technology craps the bed. And it's going to be something that is just going to give you that peace of mind knowing, okay, I don't have anything to stress about because I've got my backup plan and I know I'm set. In diabetes, we always have the backup to the backup too. So just keep that in mind. But let me know, have you done a pump break before? Have you not done a pump break? Let me know if this helped you. Let me know also what questions you have. Reach out to me at manofzeel, MANOFTZEEL on Instagram, on TikTok. If you're listening to this, you're getting a ton of value from it and you're loving it. It would mean the world to me if you gave a 5-star review. That would be absolutely incredible. So please let me know what topics you want to hear next. And if you're looking for that next level of support, my team and I are here to help. We're all dietitians. We all live with type 1 ourselves. And we all have exercise backgrounds. And we're helping people just like you every single day to have incredible blood sugars while eating amazing food and living life unrestricted by a condition they didn't ask for. So with that, I'll catch you in the next episode.
Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.